Good morning, YouTubes. We are in Joshua chapter 18, which is around page 243 in the scriptures. I was recently told by a brother and sister that not all versions of the scriptures are the same. So all the scriptures that I own are the same, but not all of them are the same. So on or near page 243 in the scriptures, Joshua chapter 18, we're still dealing with the tribal allotments. At this particular stage in the game, Joshua has kind of had enough of people that won't necessarily do their jobs. So, and yes, we're in the mess hall at Bethany House. Happy to say all of the operational requirements for Bethany House have been met. Praise the Most High. So they can use that facility for its intended purposes. And we will be back in 2021, assuming that we get funded to begin work on a chapel building here, subject to the Father's will and the ridiculousness of the world. All right, Joshua chapter 18. And all the congregation of the children of Israel assembled at Shiloh, and they let the tent of appointment dwell there. This is the tabernacle. And the land was subdued before them, and 7 tribes were left among the children of Israel who had not yet shared their inheritance. The land was subdued before them. They had cleaned the place out, mostly. We had some stragglers, like the Canaanites, that were not taken out by the tribe of Judah, and also not taken out by the tribe of Ephraim, even though they were commanded. We'll talk about that later. And 7 tribes were left among the children of Israel who had not yet shared their inheritance. So Joshua said to the children of Israel, "Till when are you going to fail to go in and possess the land which Yahweh your Elohim, the Elohim of your fathers, has given you? How come you haven't done this yet? Appoint 3 men from each tribe, and let me send them out to go through the land and describe it according to their inheritance, and come back to me. And they shall divide it into 7 portions. Judah stays within their border to the south, and the house of Joseph stays within their border to the north. You shall describe the land in 7 portions, and shall bring it to me. Then I shall cast lots for you here before Yahweh our Elohim. But the Levites have no portion among you, for the priesthood of Yahweh is their inheritance. And Gad and Reuben and half the tribe of Manasseh have received their inheritance beyond the Jordan on the east, which Moshe, the servant of Yahweh, gave them." So Joseph's like, look, we got 7 tribes left. Y'all don't know where you're living. I'm tired of you guys not having this thing figured out yet. 3 men from each tribe are going to go throughout the land and essentially write a description of the different areas within the land. Then you're going to bring it back to me, and I will cast lots. I'll handle this. And there's certain exclusions here. Judah already has their land. Ephraim already has their land. Gad, Reuben, and Manasseh are on the east side of the Jordan. They never went into, technically, the promised land as it is. So they're not concerned about any of that. And the Levites don't get land. The Levites never get land. That's part of the relationship between the Levites and the other tribes, is that as offerings are brought unto the temple, that the Levites receive a portion of that for their sustenance. And so they do have livestock, but they don't have land. They do have holdings, but they're in cities. And so the Levites have never been promised a portion. The 3 and the 7 tribes is an interesting number as well, because 3 is the number of spiritual completion. 3 men from each tribe, 7 tribes. 7 is the number of the Father working perfection here on earth. And this is not numerology, this is numerics, meaning that those numbers are found throughout the Bible. And when you find those numbers, that's what the Father's doing with those numbers. 3 is an easy number to understand as spiritual completion. The Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, the Torah, the prophets, the resurrection. Moses, Elijah, Yeshua. So, good morning, puppers. Pupper says good morning. So, also, what is the number of the Father? 777, 3 sevens. It's just an interesting number. Good morning. So, 18 verse 8. So the men rose up and went, and Joshua commanded those who went to describe the land, saying, "Go, walk through the land and describe it, and come back to me, and let me cast lots for you here before Yahweh in Shiloh." So the men went and passed through the land and described it in a book in 7 portions by cities. And they came to Joshua at the camp in Shiloh. And Joshua cast lots for them in Shiloh before Yahweh. And there Joshua divided the land to the children of Israel according to their portions. And the lot of the tribe of the children of Benjamin, came up from their clans, and the border of the lot came between the children of Judah and the children of Joseph. And their border was on the north side from the Jordan, and the border went up to the side of Jericho on the north, and went up through the mountains westward, and ended at the wilderness of Beth-aven. And the border went over from there towards Luz, to the side of Luz, that is Bethel, southward. And the border went down towards Ataroth Adar, by the hill that lies on the south side of lower Beth Horon. And the border was drawn and went around the west side of the south from the hill that faces Beth Horon southward, and it ended at Kiriath Baal. I would highly recommend, by the way, these are all just a bunch of ridiculous words that are 4,000 plus years old that some dude in Oklahoma is trying to pronounce. Get a map. It's one of the reasons I love the scriptures, because there's a map in the back of it. If you want this to make sense to you, get a map so you can see it. But let's see here. There we go. The last page in the scriptures is that map. And it shows who was where and the cities that are inside of those borders. So otherwise, this is just a bunch of nonsense. You're like, Beth, or what, who, why did they go there? That doesn't make any sense. But they're drawing borders. This is important. There's a Torah for border disputes and how do you treat your neighbor. Love your neighbor as yourself. Well, there's rules for all this stuff. Where do we go here? 14, and the border was drawn and went around the west side of the south from the hill of Beth Horon southward, and it ended at Kiriath Baal. That is Kiriath Yearim, the city of the children of Judah. This is the west side. And the south side was from the end of Kiriath Yearim, and the border went around westward and went down the fountain of the waters of Neftavah. And the border came down to the end of the mountain that faces the valley of the son of Hinnom, which is the valley of the Rephaim on the north. Rephaim, those are giants. They killed all those people. It was cool. Caleb, one of my favorite people. Caleb was awesome. Caleb was 85 years old when they finally get done cleaning out the promised land. He was 40 years old when they got to the promised land as a spy. Then only Caleb and Joshua were like, hey, the promised land looks good, let's go in. The other 10 spies were like, we're not going in. There's giants in there. And so the father's like, fine, you rejected the promised land. Y'all can go wander in the wilderness for 40 years. So this unrighteous generation that rejected the promised land dies off. And so of the 603,550 military-age males in the nation of Israel at that time, Israel meaning the father's chosen people, only Joshua and Caleb were left alive when they got back to the promised land 40 years later. So Caleb was 80 years old by the time they get back to the promised land. Then they have to go in and clear out the promised land. So then they spend 5 years at war. Then after all of that, Caleb's 85 years old, and he goes, yo, Josh, I want that mountain. And Joshua goes, there's giants up in those hills, bro. And he goes, cool. He said, there's 3 of them, the sons of Anak. And Caleb responds to Joseph and says, literally, I'm as good today as I was the day that Moshe pointed us into the promised land. Let's go. And Caleb grabs his boys, and they go up the mountain and kill not 1, but 3 giants. So this whole, the Father has a plan for me, and I just feel like he's leading me in the right direction. It's like you might wander in the wilderness for 40 years, then go to war for 5 years, and then still have to slay 3 giants. to get to where he needs you to go. I love Caleb. He's awesome.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah. But puppers are not happy. Guard dogs. Good guarding. So, there's a little story for you. YouTubes. The Valley of the Rephaim, those were giants. Okay. And it was drawn from the north, went out to En Shemesh, and went towards Gileath, which is the opposite the ascent of Adumim, and went down the stone of Bohan, son of Reuben, and passed over the side opposite Arabah northward, and went down to Arabah. And the border passed over to the side of Beth Hogla northward, and the border ended at the north bay of the Salt Sea at the south end of the Jordan. This was the southern border. And the Jordan borders it on the east side. This was the inheritance of the children of Benjamin according to its boundaries all around for their clans. And the cities of the tribe of the children of Benjamin for their clans were Jericho, Beth Hogla, Emek Ketzis, and Beth Arabah, and Semararim, Bethel, Avim, Para, Ophrah, and Kefar Chamanoi, or whatever that says, Ophni, Gaba, 12 cities with their villages, Gabon, Ramah, Beeroth, Mitzpah, Kephirah, Motza, Rakem, Yirpael, Taralah, Selah, Eleph, Yebusite, that is Yerushalayim, Gibeth, or Jerusalem, Gibath, and Kiriath, 14 cities with their villages. This was the inheritance of the children of Benjamin for their clans. And then we're going to read 19, and we're going to plow 19, because it's all the Hebrew words, but we have to just, I made, the father punched me in the forehead a year ago and said, you're going to read your Bible on camera, and no, he said, read your Bible. I said, I'm doing that. And he said, no, on camera, you idiot. I said, okay, I guess. And so I did. And when that happened, it was over a year ago, we had 2,000 subscribers on YouTube, of 97,000 now. So I could see his hand at work, but I decided we're skipping nothing, so that we can say we have read every word of this Bible together. And so sometimes you just end up smack dab in a desert of Hebrew words that don't make any sense at all, but we're reading them anyway, because that was the commitment that I made. We're reading the whole thing, all of it. But don't worry, because after this, we're going to go to the book of Acts, which is super cool. So, and y'all will get this on Friday evening, and then you'll get Acts on Sunday morning. Praise Yah. Because that's how technology works. All right. Joshua 19. And the second lot came out for Simeon, or Shemon, depending on which translation you're reading, for the tribe of the children of Simeon for their clans. And their inheritance was within the inheritance of the children of Judah, within the children of Judah. And they had in their inheritance Beersheba, or Sheba, and Moladah, and Hatzar Shaul, and Bela, and Etzim, and El Tolad, and Bethel, and Hormah, and Siklach, and Beth Markaboth, and Hatzar Susa, and Beth Leboeth, and Shacharun, 13 cities and their villages, and Ayin, Rimmon, Ether, and Ashan, 4 cities and their villages, and all the villages that were around these cities as far as Baaleth, Be'er, Ramoth Negeb. This was the inheritance of the tribe of Simeon for their clans. The inheritance for the children of Simeon was out of the portion of the children of Judah, for the portion of children of Judah was too much for them. So Judah had too much, so Simeon got a little piece broken off. See, this is what happens when you can't figure it out for yourself. And then Joshua has to go and goes, says, hey, your piece was this big, now it's this big because we're giving a portion of that to Simeon. Should have been handled 5 years. Had 5 years to figure this out. They've been in the land fighting for 5 years at this point. You think Simeon would have had an idea of like, we'd like to put our tents over there. Couldn't get their poop in a group. So, all right. And the third lot came up for the children of Zebulon, for their clans and for the borders of their inheritance as far as Sarid. And the borders went towards the sea of Maralah and reached Dabasheth, and reached to the Wadi, which is a dry riverbed that faced Yokaneam, and turned back from Sarid eastward towards the sunrise in the border of Kisloth Tabor, and went out towards Debarath, and went towards Yaphiah. And from there it passed eastward over the east of Gath Hefer towards Eth Katzin, and went out to Ramon, which borders Nia. And the border went around on the north side of Hanathan, and it ended in the valley of Yipiath El, or however the hell you say that word. Also Kata and Nahalal and Shimron and Yadalah and Bethlehem, 12 cities with their villages. This was the inheritance of the children of Zebulun for their clans, these cities with their villages. The fourth lot came out for Issachar, for the children of Issachar for their clans, and their border was towards Yisrael, and Keseloth Shenuim, and Hapharaim, and Shirion, and Anaharath, and Rabith, and Kishon, and Abetz, and Rameth, and En-Ganim, and En-Hadah, and Beth Patsetz. And the border reached to Tabor, and Shahatzimah, and Beth Shemeth, and their borders ended at the Jordan, 16 cities with their villages. It's interesting how you have the city and the village. It's like how you have like Dallas, and then you have all the bedroom communities outside of Dallas. Right? It's still the same concept. I don't know, it just strikes me. You have the big place, and then you have all the little places around the big place. Just saying. And the fifth lot came out for the tribe of the children of Asher for their clans, and the border was Helkath and Hali, and Beten, and Arkshaph, and Alamech, and Amad, and Mishael, and it reached to Mount Carmel westward, and to the brook Shahor Libnath, and turned towards the sunrise to Beth Dagon, and reached to Zebulon and to the valley of Yipath El, and then northward beyond Beth Amek and Ne'el, I have no idea, and went out to Kabul, which is on the left. I know about Kabul. And Hebron and Rehob and Haman and Cana as far as the great Sidon. And the border turned to Ramah and to the strong city Sor, and to the border turned to Hosa and ended at the sea from the coast of Akzib. And Umah and Aphek and Rehob were included, 22 cities with their villages. This was the inheritance of the tribe of the children of Asher for their clans, for these cities and their villages. The sixth lot came out for the children of Naftali, for the children of Naftali for their clans. And their border was from Heleph, from the terebinth tree in Saanim, and Adami Nekeb, and Yabnael, as far as Lakum, and it ended at the Jordan. Interestingly, because you got the 12 tribes of Israel, right? The 12 tribes of Israel are the offspring of the 12 sons of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. Jacob was Israel, personified. In Genesis 32, in fact, when we read Acts, we're going to look at that. In Genesis 32, Jacob wrestles with God. I believe he wrestled with Yeshua, with Jesus, the manifestation of the Father here on earth. And Israel means three things. Literally the frame Yisrael means three things. He who has striven with Elohim, who's fighting with him, he who is overcome with Elohim, and he who is ruling with Elohim. And it represents a progression from being at war with the Father or fighting with him to accepting that and overcoming who you are with him, and then being in a position to rule with him. And that goes all the way back to the Adamic covenant that's made in Genesis 2, where man is to rule and subdue over the creation that the Father has made. Now that gets all messed up because of the Nahash HaSatan, but that covenant never went away. And so there's a progression with the word Israel from being at war with the Father and then progressing through that, overcoming that, and then letting him use you to rule and subdue. Not with an iron fist, with love and compassion and mercy and understanding and wisdom and discernment and strength and power and authority, all of that. Because this earth is kind of a crap show, and it needs people to rule and subdue in the Father's name to make sure that things don't get out of line. But Israel comes from the 12, is also the nation of Israel, is the 12 tribes. Those 12 tribes were the 12 sons of Jacob, Israel. And some are these big, massive tribes, and some are these little itty-bitty tribes that don't have near as many people as the rest of them. There's still a portion for them. Like, they still set aside land according to their need for them. It's not like, whatever. Who cares about Asher? No, Asher still got what was coming to them. There was no oversight there. So there's a lot of justice and right ruling in that. They were commanded that from jump. Moses told them that from jump. When you go in the land, this is how you have to do it. Divide the land per your need, per the tribes according to their need. Make sure that it's fair, and they're doing that. And that's good provision and blessing for those tribes. You know, it shouldn't just be, well, Judah's this big, and we're going to give you a postage stamp, Asher. They're going out of their way to make sure that they get what they're supposed to get. Now, it takes Joshua interceding at this point to make that happen, which is an interesting parallel because Joshua is actually a type of Messiah. Yehoshua means salvation. It's literally the same Hebrew word as Yeshua, which is Jesus. That in the Greek, it was Jesus, which got Americanized, anglicized. Well, America didn't exist at the time, got anglicized into Jesus. So we go from Yehoshua to Joshua, or Yeshua to Jesus to Jesus. And there's a lot of parallels between Joshua and Messiah. So it's the right ruling and making sure that everybody gets according to their need. I just find it an interesting parallel. And also, it's nice to add little tidbits like that so we're not just plowing through Hebrew words. So, let's plow through some Hebrew words. Where the heck were we? Not all of that. The sunrise, 35. And the cities of defense were Sedim, Ser, and Hamath, and Raqqa, and Kinnereth, and Adamah, and Ramah, and Hatzor, and Kadesh, and Edrei, and En-Hatzor, and Yaron, and Migdal-El, and Horem, and Beth-Anah, and Beth-Shemesh, 19 cities with their villages. This was the inheritance of the tribe of Naftali for their clans, their cities, their village. And the seventh lot came out for the tribe of the children of Dan for their clans. And the border of their inheritance was Surah, and Eshtaol, and Ir-Shemesh, and Shalabim, that's a cool name, Shalabim, and Ayalon, and Yitalath, and Elon, and Timanath, and Ekron, and Ekaleth, and Gibbethon, and Baalath, and Yahud, and Bani Barak, and Gath-Ramon, and Me Yarkon, and Rakon, and the border before Yapho. And the border of the children of Dan went out from them, and the children of Dan went up to fight against Leshem and captured it. And they struck it with the edge of the sword and possessed it and dwelt in it and called it Leshem, Dan, after the name of Dan, their father. And this is the inheritance of the tribe of the children of Dan for their clans, these cities with their villages. And when they had ended dividing the land as an inheritance according to their borders, the children of Israel gave an inheritance to Joshua, son of Nun, in their midst. According to the mouth of Yahweh, they gave the city which he asked for, Timnath Serah, in the mountains of Ephraim, and he built the city and dwelt in it. These were the inheritances which Eleazar the priest and Yehoshua son of Nun and the heads of the fathers of the tribes of the children of Israel divided as an inheritance by lot in Shiloh before Yahweh at the door of the tent of appointment. And they ended dividing the country. Praise Yah. Yay. Shalom, YouTube.